Welcome to the Sexy and Sacred Show with Sage and Steve, where sexuality, sensuality, and spirituality meet to help you create a blissful relationship that enhances your spiritual path and raises your love vibration for personal and planetary transformation. Welcome back to the Sexy and Sacred Show with me, Steve Gibbs, and my sacred partner, Sage Kaler Kingsley. Our topic is sacred sex, the magic of sex, and sex magic. So, in our last show, we talked about sacred partnership, also known as a divine relationship. Today, we're going to be looking at the sexual component of that, sacred sexuality. I know.
Juicy.
Everybody's been waiting for this, right?
Juicy time.
Yeah. So, for me, I look back on my dating history, which was a lot of online dating. And I wanted it all in one package. I wanted that deep emotional connection. I wanted hobbies and common interest. But I know that I really wanted someone who matched me sexually. Mm-hmm. To me, that was very important. I'd had people that we had sex, but it was like maybe once a week, and it was, I don't think I'm comfortable doing that.
Kind of vanilla.
Kind of vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I like a little kink there, mm-hmm. not too much. Mm-hmm. But I also want someone who's got a little imagination mm-hmm. and is willing to hey, let's go play around in public and things like that. So
this picnic table looks inviting.
That's right. So there were a lot of things that I was not getting in a relationship that I wanted to. Some of them I maybe wasn't even quite ready to talk to someone about because I might felt a little bit intimidated, like, gee, should I really ask them if I want to do that? I was not always asking for what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And I got involved in some relationships where a lot of things worked really well. We had a good friendship, and I'm very, very grateful for all the relationships that I've been in. I got a lot of things out of every one of them. I'm friends with a number of them still, mm-hmm. And I don't feel like I wasted time or mm-hmm. shouldn't have done, this or that or the other thing. I didn't make all kinds of mistakes. Yeah. Although there's some things that now I would do differently. Mm-hmm. So the reality is, one of the biggest things missing for me was the sex aspect of it at a higher level. I had been with women who not everything was fitting, but the sex worked pretty well. So I got little bits and pieces of that and realized early on, even into my 20s, my ex-wife was someone that was highly sexual and pretty darn kinky. As a matter of fact, she was kind of a little bit beyond me. But part of that was because of some woundings. Yeah. And that was not even necessarily as healthy as it could have been mm-hmm. in my mind. That was just, that's me. That's my opinion.
Right.
So I got on some dating sites, some other online sites that were pretty much sex only.
Sex-oriented.
They were sex-oriented. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say only, because there were some people that had long-term relationships off of these sites. But I found out after doing that while I had some fun sex, certainly, I was not finding the emotional components. And most of those people on the sites, what they really probably were having, they were dealing with other problems that they'd had in other relationships, and they had fears, they had woundings. For them, it felt like the best way to deal with it was to, number one, not commit deeply mm-hmm. to one person, and number two, not live with them or get married to them, and just keep their space, mm-hmm. Not go all in terms of relationship. And I knew very well that that's not what I wanted. So while I did that for a while and had some fun doing it, that didn't last very long. And I ended up back onto actually OkCupid, mm-hmm. which actually is where I met Sage.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me that we both had a lot of things that seemed in common on there. And there were a couple things for me that I'm going, oh, I don't know. I've got a cat and she's a dog person,
Well,
you know.
I'm allergic to some cats, but thank goodness, you guys, I'm not allergic to this beautiful smudge. I'm not. She sleeps curled up right next to me, and I'm no allergies. So thank goodness for that. But yeah, there were a couple things, and we also have a distance involved because we live like 60 miles apart, so that was a concern. But as Steve pointed out, when we were messaging each other, because we were reading each other's profiles, and we were like, oh my God, creativity, spirituality, law of attraction. And you even put in your profile too, like little implications about kinkiness and high libido. And I was like, okay, this could maybe work. So it was like, wow, this looks like could, maybe even everything in one person, but we just weren't sure about like the distance and the cat and the dog kind of thing. But you were awesome. And you pointed out, well, we don't know until we meet. We don't really know until we give it a try. So why rule it out at this point? There's a lot of arrows kind of pointing to something really possible here. And the energy was just off the charts. So I would like to share. I'm glad that you, first of all, kept looking and kind of didn't, settle for less than you really wanted. Just, just to settle down kind of thing. Like you always knew, okay, so this relationship is okay for now, and this is satisfying, like enough for what I want or need right now. But some part of us, I think, when it's not the long-term place, or it's really not what we're longing for spiritually and sexually and emotionally, especially, there's something inside that says, it's not quite right. Or, you're like always wondering, like, how long is this going to last? Or do they feel the same way about me? Or do I feel deeply enough for them? Or would I be better off on my own than with this person? You start kind of asking all these questions, but when it's the right person, you really don't go round and round with all those questions. So I love that you've healed enough of your sexuality that, you're able to enjoy that sacred and that sexual in our partnership. So I would like to share a little bit about what sacred sex means to me. Would that be okay?
Okay. Yes, please.
And my favorite way to share, one of my favorite ways, is with poetry. So here's a nice little mystic poem. Sacred sex. Sacred sex is gazing into your beloved's eyes and seeing the universe. Touching your beloved's hand and feeling electricity shoot through your entire body. Holding your beloved close and knowing you are safe. You are treasured. You are home. Sacred sex is adoring your beloved's body as a temple of divine energy and a playground of passion and pleasure. Enhancing your beloved's deepest sense of loving themselves and life through the holy portal of giving and receiving infinite love through you. Sacred sex is remembering the truth of who you are whenever you allow yourself to give and receive erotic bliss. Sacred sex is dedicating your relationship to your path of awakening, healing, and enlightenment.
Beautiful.
And sex really can be that magical. So breathe that in. See this, feel it, know it, call it in, receive it. And the thing about sex that's so magical, it's like that's sacred sex, that you can really feel the magic of that. But even like sort of regular sex, I would say, that's not like as spiritual per se, still has some magical components. We're going to be talking about that too. So even if you're not accessing that or feeling that yet, this show is going to be perfect for you too, even if you're not quite at that level of relationship or sacred sexuality, even with yourself yet.
Magic of sex and sex magic. Listeners may be wondering, aren't those the same thing? Or maybe they're picturing strange potions and incantations and flashing lights and cauldrons. Can you tell us what you mean by these two terms?
I do have some really nice cloaks, but no. So let's talk first about the magic of sex, and then we'll get into like the really like, ooh, sex magic. So the magic of sex, what I mean by that is really these are the benefits of having a vibrant, healthy sex life, regardless of whether you consider yourself to be in a spiritual relationship or not, or even any relationship or not for that matter. So I've been researching this, and rather than cite like 10 or 20 different research articles for all of you and put you to sleep, I'm going to summarize and kind of paraphrase some of the findings that I came up with, and you can certainly corroborate these by researching on your own. But essentially, there are absolutely phenomenal benefits of having a healthy sex life at every age, past adult, becoming an adult, basically. And so this is sociologically, chemically, physiologically, and energetically. So what is it about sex that's so enticing, so delicious, so magnetic that it feels magical at times, right? So sociologically and physiologically, we're animals. We tend to be in denial about that. We're like, oh, we're human, we're so superior. But, we're animals, and we're wired to have desires, and that is natural. Steve is sniffing me. I like your pheromones. We have no fear of moans around here either.
No, not either.
I always like that joke. I don't know where it came from, but it's cute. And, sex does help people bond emotionally. We also have, when we have sex with someone, we're exchanging energy, and there are endorphins that are released. And in the first 1 to 2 years of a new sexual relationship with someone, you also have a lot of dopamine. And I can talk more in other shows. I actually ghost wrote part of a book about love and compatibility, and I ghost wrote an entire chapter about brain chemistry and hormones and how that affects compatibility and love relationships. So you've got these chemicals going on, you've got the sociological, the physiological, and, some people can separate sex from love more easily than others, and that works for them, or some people can be polyamorous, and that works for them, and others not, right? So you need to kind of know how you are with that, and that can also change over time. I like to joke, and this has been true for me for ages, but I joke that when my legs open, my heart opens. And I'm pretty hardwired, no pun intended. Steve's more hardwired than me. But I'm kind of wired that once I am sexual with someone and in some kind of relationship, I start falling in love. I start feeling that, ooh, and looking through what I call the honeymoon goggles and just seeing all their good qualities, not seeing the not so good qualities. And so it's important for me as an awakening woman who knows that my body is a sacred temple. It's important for me to have the discernment before I sleep with someone. So, and then you're in my case, Steve, we were getting to know each other, messaging and phone calls. And then once we met, we moved pretty quickly. And I was comfortable with that because I felt like I knew who you are, right? But we were clear about what kind of relationship that we wanted. And we knew that we wanted the same thing. And so that was important to me as well.
Although I must say, our first night we actually slept together, it was quite interesting because it was very obvious that we both wanted to sleep with each other. And we had basically logicked the fuck out of this. I mean, we had talked about all of these things, and there was no way either of us were going to talk ourselves into doing anything except we knew we were going to be together. It just felt so obvious. And it's like, why not? So eventually, after pretty good amount of hours of going through this, and we were actually in the same bed together.
Snuggling,
we were going to be sleeping,
kissing,
cuddling, kissing, and just loving each other and appreciating and
Eye-gazing,
adoring each other and
lots of
eye-gazing. Basically, we did everything except intercourse. And I would have been fine to just go to sleep, except I finally said, it just seems like this is going to be inevitable anyway. So maybe we should just go ahead and do this.
You said something, but it wasn't pressuring. And
No.
I
Not at all.
didn't want to. I was still running like a tape in my head about like, if I sleep. Oh, I know what you said that made the difference for me. I remember it now. I was running a tape in my head that said, if I sleep with him on the first date, it wasn't so much that makes me a slut, although there might have been a little bit of a judgment on that, like deep subconscious. It was more that, is he going to then put me in that category, in that box where he's like, okay, this is the type of woman who will sleep with someone on the first date, therefore she's not long-term relationship material. Therefore she's not discerning enough or classy enough or, high quality enough or whatever. Part of me was thinking that, even though it was very clear on every single level that we wanted each other and that we were incredibly compatible. And we even had like amazing synchronistic signs pointing to how meant to be this was. And then at one point we were just cuddling for hours and kissing. And I was like, I want him, but I don't know. Maybe we should just, wait until day 2 or 3, right? Kind of going through this in my head. And at one point, honey, you said, I just want you to know that whatever we do tonight or don't do tonight is okay with me. And I really want you, but I'm okay with whatever you choose.
Yeah.
But I want you to know that whatever you do choose, it's not going to make me think any less of you, because it would be impossible for me to think any less of you. I'm thinking so highly of you now. I want you to really know that. And that's from my heart. You can feel that, and I felt that. And I was like, oh, thank goodness he's not going to put me in the slut box. So let's go for it.
Yeah.
So anyway, it really didn't make a difference, I think, in the big picture, whether we slept together on day 2 or day 3 or day 5.
It just means less fun in the
meantime.
meantime.
Nature come take its course, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was wanting to make sure that my discernment was in place, because I knew that once we were physically intimate completely, that I would have a tendency to go into the in-loveness, zone. And I didn't want to waste that sort of on someone who wasn't a long-term match,
Yep. Well, your inner being knew the answer to that question, and so did mine.
Very true.
Yep.
Very true.
Yep.
So, sex has these incredible values. And I want to talk about the energetics about that a little bit more, and then we'll talk more about some research about sex. So energetically, and we're going to talk more about chakras. If you guys want to hear more about the chakra system and tantric and energy work kinds of things, we can go into more detail on that in future shows. But essentially, in ancient India, they've been teaching for thousands of years that the chakras are energy centers, and the word chakra means wheel. So it's a wheel of light. And most people, if they're familiar with chakras, they know about the major 7 in the spine, which run from the first chakra at the base of the spine. And then the second chakra is the sexual center, which we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. And then we can talk more about all of them later. And then they go up to the third chakra in the belly, the fourth, the heart, the fifth, the throat, the sixth, the third eye, the seventh, the crown. So the second chakra governs not only sexuality, but also creativity and playfulness and pleasure. So when a person's second chakra is kind of closed down almost entirely, or like the volume is really low, or they're not running a healthy amount of energy there.
People that are workaholics tend to have
they feel
down.
disconnected from their body. They don't feel as juicy. They don't feel as alive. They're not as playful. They're not as happy. There is a certain giddiness. There is an aliveness, a kind of juiciness, a vavavoomness that people who are sexually vibrant, whether that's with themselves only or with a partner or partners, however they do that, that is an important part of a healthy second chakra and your sex life. And so this is very real. So sociologically, physiologically, chemically, sex is an important part of being a human. And research-wise, in the last 10, 20, 30 years, there's been a tremendous amount of really interesting research. And you guys can look that up on your own. Let me just give you some summary of what the research is finding. And these are some benefits for people who have sex on a regular basis. Some of them were defining that as once a week. Others were defining it as more 2 or 3 times a week, depending on the study. But these are longitudinal studies with people over long periods of time in multiple countries. And what they're finding overall is that people who have a healthy, regular, satisfying sex life have a happier marriage and relationship satisfaction. They have stronger immunity. They sleep better, lower stress, lower blood pressure, lower risk of prostate cancer. They burn more calories. Yay. What a more fun way to burn calories than that, right? Yeah. Sexercise. They have higher self-esteem, better cardiovascular health. Sex cures and even prevents headaches. Lower risk of heart disease, depression, greater happiness, stronger pelvic muscles, reduces and relieves pain, not only headaches, but pain in general, better memory, deeper intimacy, and even live longer.
Yeah, that's amazing.
If that's not enough to inspire you to find a way to get busy with yourself, if not with another person or both. One study, for example, with Psychoneuroendocrinology Journal was finding that women who have sex once a week have significantly longer telomeres, which is the indication for longevity, and around 100 orgasms a year may add 3 or more years to your life.
That's no problem.
Right?
Yeah.
That's only about 3 orgasms a week or so.
Yep. But that doesn't mean then go out and get drunk and celebrate, because that'll just take it right back off again.
Yeah, right. That's true. That's a good point. So, part of the key is to understand your needs and desires with sex and how that correlates to intimate relationship and what it is that works for you, and be willing to look for that and manifest that and ask for that and co-create that, and don't just settle for something that's kind of or just being alone forever. And
when you mentioned 100 a year, there was another study I remember we were talking about that was more like 300 a year. And I believe that one was saying
8 years.
You're talking about 8 years added on.
Right.
So,
Almost
some people are like, that's no big deal.
An orgasm a day keeps the grim reaper away.
That's right. So, that says a lot. I mean, there's a lot of other benefits as well, obviously.
And even without orgasms. Yeah. And a lot of those benefits were not orgasm specific.
Right.
And they weren't even partner specific. So some of those benefits you can tap into on your own, because if you're sitting there thinking, well, all that's fine and dandy for people who have a partner or for people who have, a long-term relationship they're happy with,
save sex until they get married, or
masturbation
is bad. You shouldn't masturbate, having guilt around that. There's a lot of limiting beliefs around that. Things like if a woman loves sex a lot, well, she must be a slut. Well, when I was growing up, boy, I can't tell you how many times people in school, kids especially, would talk about that and say, oh, she's such a slut.
She's easy.
Yeah, she's easy, or she's this, or she's that. And I remember dating a gal back then who I actually never had sex with, and that's before I had sex at all. We had a wonderful, incredible relationship. We were very much in love, but I was one of these people that I couldn't get out of my skin to dance or do a lot of things. And she finally was like, I wasn't ready. So she moved on to somebody else. But
those judgments can really stick with us, even from grade school or from our parents. Even if consciously we think, oh, I don't think that about myself or other people anymore. There could be still some subconscious dreck in there that's limiting you or holding you back. And I think for men too, there are judgments of men too, don't you think?
Yes,
Steve,
exactly.
if a man is highly sexual,
Oh, yeah.
he's sexualizing me. A lot of women are like, oh, he's sexualizing me. You know, why are you grabbing my butt in the
pervert.
kitchen? Well, for goodness sake, why are you not grabbing my butt in the kitchen? I want somebody who wants that, and feels that with me. But
I mean, obviously, this all has to start with respect. And,
of course.
If there's a good
boundaries.
balance and you honor your partner's boundaries, you can have sex 10 times a day, and there's nothing wrong with that. So the reality is, whatever the hell we have in our society, they talk about in terms of sex, that's not reality. And in other countries, they look at Americans as being a little bit
kind of prudish.
Yeah,
they do think we're all prudish.
Don't get me started on religions.
Yeah, I know, right? A lot of it does come from religious backgrounds. And it's interesting because I know a lot of people are like recovered Catholics or, they're not Christian anymore or Judeo-Christian religions, but it's not only those religions. And there are people who are in those religions who do have a healthy sexuality. So let's just point that out as well. But also even some of the Eastern religions, tell people you're supposed to transcend earthly desires. And I don't really buy that. I work with a lot of concepts from Eastern religions and practices, more like spiritual practices, I would say, rather than religion. But you have to kind of decide what beliefs are helping you. Is that belief helping you? Is it helping you feel good about yourself, your body, yourself as a human, as a sexual being, as an animal, as a complete being, a spiritual being as well? And one of our main points you're going to get from us over and over here on Sexy and Sacred Show is that you can be both sexy and sacred. They're not opposite ends of some kind of spectrum.
Correct.
That they are integrated, and a completely joyous life, I call it full chakra living and loving, is you're experiencing all of it on a fairly regular basis, and you kind of bring your attention maybe more here or more there, right? But you can have it all in your life and in your relationship.
Yep. And I would like to add that many women, in fact, maybe even most, are not comfortable with a man who is fully in his sexual energy. Oftentimes, especially when I first was meeting women in dating situations, even though I saw things in their profile, for example, that made it seem like they're very highly sexual, if I put out that energy, it's like, oh, this guy, that's all he's interested in is sex. So obviously, men, you want to be there emotionally. You want to be supportive. You want to show all of the good values that are not sexual first. I mean, that's a huge thing that men can do, is just put out all this sexual energy right up front. But if all of those connections are made and you get to a point to where you know that you respect your partner and they respect you, don't hold back on fully engaging with your sexual energy.
Especially if you communicate
Exactly.
about it first.
Communicate.
Yeah, you might not be
about
grabbing
it.
someone's butt in the kitchen that you don't know very well.
Right.
Right?
But that's the whole key is to be communicating fully and share your desires and invite it. And one of the things that I've had happen in a couple of relationships is that just my partner was not willing to fully communicate about that. Mm-hmm. And you can tell there was just kind of holding back. Mm-hmm. and especially like during sex, well, you try and talk about things like that beforehand, but there are times when you want to share what's going on initially. And sure, it might feel uncomfortable in some situations, but the reality is, do what you can to share who you are fully and be who you are fully in the relationship, because it will serve you much better and give your partner the opportunity to say what they want and to share their boundaries.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of boundaries, a really cool practice that I found is to make for myself a kind of red light, yellow light, green light list of sexual activities. And so the red lights are things that I am never probably going to want. And like, I'd rather my partner not even ask me about it. Like things involving blood or hanging from a ceiling or poop, you know, right? Like, so, you know, those are my red light, you know, and there's more. There are other things too, right? And then yellows are kind of like, well, I don't usually want that, but like I'm open to maybe considering that, maybe under the right circumstances. You know, let's talk about it. Like, how do you feel about it? Because if I have a yellow and for you it's a green, it's like, oh, I love this. You know, well, I might be willing to try it if my boundaries are respected and if it's done in a certain environment and with a lot of love and, you know, slowly, compassionately, whatever, right? And then I have my greens that I'm like, yes, oh God, I love that. I love that. I love that. More of that, please. Like not necessarily every day, right? But you might know that these are some of your favorite things. So it's kind of a great thing to know for yourself. And then you can either share that list with your partner, like in a sort of structured way, like, hey, here's my list of red, yellow, green, or just more in a kind of organic, natural unfolding kind of way, you know, situationally. So whatever works for you, but it helps to know where your own boundaries are and also to be willing to maybe stretch and communicate. So important. So we have for you, because we always like to do something experiential, we have for you guys some embodied aliveness, healthy sexuality affirmations. So get ready because you're going to hear some from me with feminine energy and some from Steve with the masculine energy. So, and I'm going to say them and then kind of pause so you on your end can repeat them aloud wherever you are. So here we go. I am creative, playful, and juicy. I savor the sweetness of life.
I love being a man. I deserve and receive all the pleasures and treasures the universe offers me. My sexuality is healthy, natural, and good. I give and receive loving touch with presence, playfulness, and mutual pleasure.
I love being a woman. I love my skin, my scent, and all my body's sexy juices. It feels safe and wonderful to be in this body. Ecstasy is my birthright.
I love, honor, and joyously express my sexual self. My body is my earthly home and my divine temple.
I treasure myself and I pleasure myself. Woohoo! I am succulent, wild, ripe, sweet, and delectable.
Yum, no kidding.
So speaking of pleasuring yourself and treasuring yourself, if you are not in a fulfilling sexual relationship currently, take matters into your own hands, my friends. You can learn to pleasure yourself, even if you haven't been comfortable masturbating or your masturbation technique has grown boring. It doesn't have to be that way, right? You can make like a little ritual. You can give yourself permission to explore that and to really revive and honor your sexuality. And I'll be talking in future shows about how I awakened my own somewhat comatose sexuality after not having had much sex with another human for 25 years.
And that's an amazing story, let me tell you.
To becoming multi-orgasmic and squirting like orgasmic every time in like almost any position, any day of the week.
Oh God, I'm so lucky.
like up, down, every which way. My goodness. Yeah, I was looking up the Guinness Book of World Records in terms of orgasmicity. That's a word, orgasmicity. And I do not have the world record for orgasmicity, number of orgasms, but I might for length of orgasm, which is only 45 seconds. I might have that beat. They might have to hook me up to something. How much money do we get if I win the award?
Boy,
the Guinness Book. I don't know.
I don't know.
We need to try, though.
Have to look that
we
up.
have some homework.
I was going to say, if nothing
home
else,
play.
it'll be fun practicing.
Definitely. So if I can go from I can barely have an orgasm other than from my own hand or from a vibrator for decades, I could almost have no orgasms from someone else doing anything to me. It was like I could literally count on one hand in like 40 years how many times a partner, male or female, could bring me to an orgasm. Like seriously, probably 5 times in 40 years.
And I want to kick in something here, because one thing that I have learned a lot about, she calls me my, what is it, sex magician or?
Sex god.
Sex god.
You're my sex god. Yeah.
So I'm more like sex magician, I think.
You're a sex magician.
Anyway.
Sexy shaman, yeah. I know.
But that's like a lot of people go, oh, wow, well, he can make such and such, make this happen, that happen. The reality is this is an energetic partnership between the two partners. So it's even gotten to the point to where it's intention and it's energy. So
energy.
I can actually run this energy. We've been lying next to each other in this dreamlight state, holding hands.
I'm getting very tingly just thinking about
and my fingers are tingling right now.
I'm looking at your fingers and knowing what they are capable of.
I know. I could feel it.
We're not actually doing anything right now, but believe me, the energy is, you can feel the energy wherever you guys are.
I know. I can feel like there's like electricity coming off my fingers.
It's like he barely does anything on the physical plane, and I'm just exploding. And
and you had one time.
I had one or two times that you weren't even touching me.
I wasn't touching you. You were lying next to me in bed.
And I started having a massive orgasm.
Yeah, you started having
an energy orgasm. Yeah.
Yep, energetic orgasm like that.
Steve is the first partner that I've ever had that with. It's like a wet dream, but way better because you're actually awake enough to feel it, to feel the pleasure waves. So that's pretty amazing. Anyway, more about these type of orgasms, and I've identified I think 6 or 7 or 8 different types of orgasms at this point. Anyway, we'll talk more about that. But, if you take more care of your sexual self and then you get more clear about what you desire and you bring that into either your dating life and your manifestation efforts for calling in your divine right mate and or your existing relationship, and you stand more clearly as an empowered woman and or man, well, I guess or it can't be both. I don't know at the same time. Although maybe, I don't know. There might be some gender fluid thing out there. That's both at the same time. But standing in your power as a sexual being who loves themselves, who loves their partner, and who knows that pleasure is good. And we have these pleasure organs for a reason, whatever your religious beliefs are. Where did those pleasure organs come from? If you believe they're only for procreation, then why are you listening to this show? This is probably not your show. That's okay, right? Go to church or something, But seriously, if you understand that sex is not only for procreation, but it's also for pleasure and it's also for intimacy, for emotional connection, there's nothing better in the world than having this kind of partnership where you just absolutely feel so connected and you feel like the luckiest person in the world, except for your partner feels that way too. So it's like you're both the luckiest people in the world. So I wanted to talk a little bit about sex magic. And we're just going to share a few ideas with you guys. We can go into it in more detail in a future show if you want more about that. So essentially, to talk about sex magic, we need to talk about the definition of magic and then the definition of sex magic. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's like, what exactly do we mean by magic? Because, magic, it could mean so many things, like just wonderful or exciting or whatever. But in this context, what I mean by magic is directing energy, intent, and resources to create a specific desired outcome. I'm going to say that again. Think about it. Definition of magic: directing energy, intent, and resources to create a specific desired outcome. Okay? So now, when you bring sex into that, how does that have anything to do with sex? Definition of sex magic. Using the energy of sex imbued with intent to create a specific desired outcome. So a lot of people, this is completely mind-blowing. They've never heard of this before. Even people on a sacred partnership, conscious loving kind of path, they don't understand that sex can be used to create outcomes. So you can utilize sex energy for manifestation and for healing. And so here's a formula. Intention plus sexual energy equals sex magic. Now I'm going to give you my most favorite example. Did you know that you can put an intention on your orgasm?
That's awesome.
You can just have your orgasm and not put an intention on it. That's fine. I'm not saying you have to do this all the time. But if you want to play with this, sometime when you're having an orgasm, there's a few ways you can do that. One, you can use it for a manifestation. Visualize something you want in your life, not manipulating another person in any way, shape, or form. This is just something that you desire. And focus on gratitude as if it's already here. Steve, did you know I called you in through my orgasms? I literally called you in. I manifested him in some nice, explosive, writhing ways. So I was picturing my divine right mate is here. My perfect partner is here, and picturing him doing all sorts of things to my body that, I'm feeling his astrally, like soul being with me already, even before he was here with me. So when you do that with orgasm, it's very powerful. There's an old saying from, I think it's an old British saying, that orgasms were considered little deaths. Like it's a little death because people kind of get sleepy afterward. They have an altered state of consciousness. But I say no. Orgasms are not little deaths. They are big bangs. They are big bangs. I mean, yes, you're banging, but it's a big bang because you're creating your universe. So put your intention, start playing with this, you guys, and let me know in the comments on our Facebook group, Sexy and Sacred Community, and on our YouTube channel. Let us know how this is working out for you. So play with this with manifestation, with gratitude. Steve knows that sometimes when either of us is having an orgasm, I might just blurt out, health, wealth, love, and happiness. Health, wealth, love, and happiness. And the first time I did that, you didn't know what in the world I was doing. You were like, what? Because we hadn't discussed sex magic and how I bridge love, attraction with sexuality and all that. But so sex is sacred. Your body is sacred. Your body is a temple to the divine. And breathe that all in.
How does Tantra fit into all this? Is that a form of Eastern sex magic? Is what I've always wondered.
Yeah, so you could say that in a way. That's a really good question, honey. So Tantra, a lot of people have this concept that it's a lot of kind of hippie people, wearing hippie garb and maybe chanting or doing whatever and kind of having a lot of polyamorous sex. So that's one concept of Tantra. That is not what Tantra is really about or what it means. And what it means is weaving. So it's weaving. It's about integration of the physical with the spiritual. And it's weaving your individual energy with someone else's energy. And it's weaving all of this together with the divine. Yes. So that is what it is. It's having a sacred experience of connection and relationship. And it's not even necessarily sexual, although it can be. And we're going to be bringing on some Tantra experts onto the show, too, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, we've got all kinds of people lined up for the future. So this is going to be quite interesting, bringing on people that Sage knows. I've got some people that I know. It's really going to be wonderful to get to hear other people's perspectives. And we want your opinions. We want your input. And tell us what you would like to hear about.
And what's standing out for you, what surprised you maybe, or was a good important reminder for you. We'd love to hear from you guys on our Facebook group, Sexy and Sacred Community. And we're starting to have our shows on YouTube as well. So you might be catching this on YouTube.
And if there's something that you don't like, you just say, you guys spend too much time talking about this or that or whatever. Hey, let us know. Let us have it. Whatever you think.
But just say it nicely. That's
just don't be mean. That's all.
I'm sure
On our next show, soulmates, heartmates, twin flames. Who is your divine right mate? Thanks for listening and blistening with us today on this Sexy and Sacred show. Thanks for being part of our growing community at the Sexy and Sacred show. Please share the love, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, and catch us next time at your favorite podcast platform. Until then, remember, you are sexy and you are sacred.